Hi everyone. In this video I'll be discussing the body of Jesus, Aztec rituals, and the power of organs, and examining how these three subjects are all connected.
What really happened to the body of Jesus? Today we'll follow the timeline step by step, examine who had access to the tomb, and ask whether the evidence points to one conclusion: that Jesus' body was removed. Jesus is crucified, and Pilate releases his body to Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph and Nicodemus bury him, while Mary Magdalene witnesses where he is placed. Matthew says guards are assigned only the following day, leaving a period before the tomb is secure. One hypothesis is that the body could have been moved during that window, although no ancient source says this happened. Around 3 days later, the tomb is found empty. Matthew describes an earthquake, an angel, and terrified guards. Mary Magdalene and other followers then report seeing Jesus alive, followed by appearances to Peter, Thomas, Nathanael, James, and others. Years later, Paul also reports an appearance and teaches Christian communities to continue the bread and cup ritual as participation in and remembrance of Jesus' body and blood. Okay, now that we've covered the timeline of Jesus' burial, we are only left with one question, and that's what happened during the time his tomb was left unguarded. And there's only one simple answer, and that's that his tomb was robbed. His body was taken away, most likely by his disciples, and they decided to conduct a ritual that's very, very similar to Aztec rituals. You may be wondering what kind of ritual this was, but to simplify, they basically sprinkled some of his blood onto the bread and probably the wine. This was so they can actually perform the eating of the flesh and drinking of his blood. And afterwards, they went around the areas of Judea giving this bread to people so they can also consume the body of Jesus without actually knowing what they were eating. Now, after they were finished consuming this food, many of them went on to claim they saw visions of Jesus, or they saw encounters with angels that told them about the story of Jesus. Well, this kind of witchcraft isn't new. This is found in many cultures where people feed others food that is attached with certain conditions or certain magical properties. So these encounters are nothing more than just the result of witchcraft. This is one of the reasons why a lot of Jesus's followers were religious outcasts or sinners, while many of the Jewish religious authorities were actually ignoring him because they were very well aware of the kind of witchcraft that Jesus was using to entice people into following him and his religious cult. Now, you may be wondering what this has to do with Aztec rituals. Well, among the Aztec Mexica, they performed a similar ritual for their war god. However, the difference was that the Mexica people knew they were eating blood whenever they ate the amaranth cakes, which is the tzoali. And here is a description of that ritual when Fray Diego Duran interviewed the Aztec elders. The ceremonies performed on the feast of Huitzilopochtli. The sacrifice ended when all the victims had been slain. Their blood was sprinkled generously upon the image of dough and upon the pieces of dough which represented the flesh and the bones of the god. All were now consecrated with human blood. On the same day, it was a solemn rule in all the land that no one eat anything but tzoali with honey. This was the dough with which the idol was formed. It had to be eaten at dawn. And if you would like to verify this, you can find this in the book of Gods and Rights by Fray Diego Duran in page 94. It's right there. Now, I'll be discussing how this ritual has the power to affect the perception and biology within people who eat this kind of bread. While it may seem they just took blood and sprinkled it on the bread, these kinds of rituals are not that simple. The witches or war priests would perform a lot of steps before even sprinkling blood on the bread. So if a person sprinkles blood on bread and gives it to someone, They are not a witch, they are just a fool playing witchcraft. This information is usually not shared because people tend to use it to create cults, like Jesus probably did when he was feeding his followers his own blood. So we're going to go ahead and focus on the scientific component, the properties of the heart, and the phenomenon among recipients of organ donations. So the heart is not just an organ that pumps blood throughout the body. Researchers in biology have determined that it has memory capacity, the capacity to hold memory. And we can see this in various publications. The heart contains an intrinsic cardiac nervous system made of neurons. Researchers describe this network as having neuronal plasticity and memory capacity, allowing it to process and regulate cardiac information. Now, this is important to know because we see this phenomenon occur among people who receive organs from donations, specifically people who receive a heart organ donation. They report experiencing feelings that weren't previously theirs. So they are experiencing the memory of another person that was stored in the flesh of the heart. I also briefly speak about this idea in my book, Aztec Fire Tongue. The beating of our heart is connected with the words we express. Many of the Aztec generals or kings would carry a small drum into battle. The beating of the drum would give strength and spirit to the warriors whenever the kings or generals issued commands. The beating of the drum was the heart of the commander, positively influencing the warrior spirit of the army. Now, in modern medicine, doctors don't tend to perform satanic rituals, so the receiver of a new heart is mostly experiencing new sensations. Maybe the love for a new sport, memories of music they never heard, or a desire to eat a specific type of food. However, the elite among the Aztec Mexica, similarly with the disciples of Jesus, both understood how to perform satanic blood rituals. The disciples of Jesus did it to manipulate their followers and acquire more followers, while the Aztec Mexica did it to continue expanding their warrior cult. This is why after Jesus died, he began to appear to many people. Everyone was having visions or encounters. Similarly to how the Mexica war priests would give flesh to the Mexica warriors to experience the ecstasy of Huitzilopochtli's power. The difference is the disciples of Jesus were not disclosing what the food had, while the Aztec warrior priests would tell people that the food was with the divine blood of gods. This is why Netzahualcoyotl, the Aztec king from the Acolhua kingdom, rejected human sacrifice, and that would include the crucifixion because it employs human blood in the disguise of divine blood.